Representative Guest for his 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. To all of our witnesses here today, I want to thank you for joining us to be part of this discussion on a very important topic for our entire country. I had the chance, along with other members of the Homeland Security Committee, roughly 2 weeks ago to visit the southwest border. We visited the processing center there in Donna, Texas, where we saw at that time 4,000 plus children in a facility that was only designated to hold 250. And so I understand that this is an issue that Congress must address. This is not something that we can turn a blind eye to, and we must begin to address the root causes, how we're going to address this long term, but also how we're going to address this in the immediate future. Ms. Reese, in your written testimony, you speak of the fact that in March there were 19,000 unaccompanied minor children which were taken in there at the border, that this was the largest number ever seen in recorded history. You go on in your report also to talk a little bit about the border crisis of 2019. And so what I want to ask you to do is I want to ask you to contrast the response of the administration, the previous administration, in dealing with the surge that we saw in 2019 versus the response that the current administration is taking to rectify or to intervene in the surge that we're seeing here today. Ms. Reese, I think you're on mute for me.
Sorry about that. The border crisis in 2019, as well as now, involves not only a lot of unaccompanied alien children, but family units. And so after the Trump administration asked Congress to close the loopholes that led to those types of flows, the Trump administration implemented the Migrant Protection Protocols, or Remain in Mexico program. This is something that Congress had passed in the 1996 law that said you can come and apply for asylum, but you can wait for those proceedings in Mexico. And when future migrants learned that they could not abuse the asylum system to get into the U.S. and then disappear into the interior, they stopped coming. Those with valid asylum applications obviously then could apply, but it greatly decreased the number, again, preventing fraud. The other key aspect of it was the asylum agreements made with the governments of El Salvador, Guatemala, and Honduras, and instituting what was called the notion of the safe third country, which is if you're truly fleeing for your life, you should seek protection in the first safe country in which you arrive, not traverse 2-3 countries just to apply for asylum in the U.S. So it prevented forum shopping. It helped those countries build up their respective asylum systems, which everybody should be for, and enforcing their respective borders.
And Ms. Reese, you're entirely correct. Much of the surge we're seeing today is coming from our Northern Triangle countries, and those immigrants are coming through Mexico. They're not requesting asylum in Mexico. They're being allowed for safe passage through Mexico, and then they're coming in the United States, and there they are requesting asylum. And so you're exactly right. That is something that we are not addressing, that the public is not talking about, is that Mexico is allowing these individuals to pass through, and they're not even attempting to apply for asylum there. You also talked about the Remain in Mexico policy, and I think it is your testimony that you believe this was an effective policy. We've heard from other witnesses that they believe that this policy had no or very little impact. Would you please talk as far as your opinion, how big of an impact the Remain in Mexico policy had once it was put in place by the administration, and now that that policy has since been withdrawn, what we are seeing as far as the increase in numbers along the southwest border?
Well, it stopped the caravans, which was a very visual sign of the flows of illegal immigrants that were coming here in 2018, 2019. Also, the numbers were in March of this year, 19,000 unaccompanied alien children. In April of 2020, there were 741. So a significant difference in numbers, but it's also not just about the numbers. It is how are the people, what does the U.S. government do with them when they come here? Are they simply being processed more quickly into the U.S. and released, which is a catch and release posture, and it is an extremely strong pull factor to for more future illegal immigration? Or are they quickly given an opportunity to seek relief from removal, and they're either granted, or if they're denied, then removed?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I believe my time is up, so I yield back.
Thank you, Mr. Guest. The gentleman yields back. Just for clarification, when we say remain in Mexico, it's the same as the MPP program that we're referencing. When we talk about concern about cartels, it did exactly that. It put families into the hands of cartels. And with that, we will go back to the chairman of the full committee and see if our audio is okay. Chairman Thompson, the gentleman is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. To any of the witnesses in particular, just one question I had deals with reunification. I know we've talked about reunification being a goal of the unaccompanied minors who come into the country. For those individuals that do not have family members in the United States, what should our long-term policy be as far as placement of these children?
I can start with so for traditionally about 10% of the unaccompanied children don't have anyone, any family member, anyone who's able to sponsor them when they arrive. So what happens is they stay in government custody through the duration of their case. So at the end of their case, they either win their case. If they win legal status, they're eligible for the Unaccompanied Refugee Minor Program, which is a federal foster care program where they can stay until they're 21 because they have their green card and they'll be on their path to citizenship. If they lose their case, then they're removed by the government, just like anyone else would be removed by ICE.
And let me ask you, Jennifer, I think maybe you told the story about the 11-year-old child who came to the United States without even consulting with his family. Assuming that he had family in his home country who wanted him back, who wanted to care for him and love for him and allow him to live in their home, should that be taken into consideration as to where the best placement for the child is? I'm thinking of many times as we deal with minor children here in the United States, and we're looking at things such as custody and what parents should get custody and where the best place for the children to grow up. And often here in our Chancery or Family Law Court, we talk about reunification, placing them back with parents, with grandparents, with aunts and uncles. Are those matters taken into consideration? And if not, should they not be taken into consideration as to where there are close family members where these children can reside and live in those homes?
That's a great question. And, we don't have the consideration of the best interest of the child in U.S. law. Right? So there's different elements, in some forms of relief and some considerations, you can talk about what might be in that child's best interest, but there really isn't a legal standard here that we're applying in our U.S. immigration system for these children, right? And we think it's very important, right? Just like you do, that we're taking into account all the considerations about this child's life and what's really going to be in their best interest. I also think it's important, we were talking about why aren't people asking for protection in Mexico, right? Mexico has a law in which they're required to consider the best interest of the child, right? And it's important for the Mexican government to be able to talk to the US government and say, hey, for example, we have a child here in Mexico who's considering applying for asylum, but their mom lives in Chicago, right? Should we, if they have support there, is the child eventually going to want to end up with her? Does it make more sense for the U.S. to adjudicate this application for asylum? And so I think it's really important, not just for the U.S. to consider the best interest of the child, but for us to be talking about it in a regional way with countries in the region to make sure that we're doing right by these kids and families.
And would you agree that should be, I know it is not, but it should be one of the things that the court should look at as the best interest of the child, whether that child remain in the United States, whether that child live in Mexico with family members or return back to their country of origin? Should that not be at least one of the factors that the court addresses as we are dealing with unaccompanied minors who in some cases would have to go into some sort of foster care family or foster care system here versus being able to return to family members who would like them to be in their homes in other countries?
Yeah, there are so many factors that need to be taken into account, and most important is where that child would be the safest, right? So it's who can care for them, where does the family live, and where would they be most safe? Those should all certainly be things that the government considers.
So you would say that that should be a factor we should consider.
Where they have family, yeah, where they have family, where they have support system, absolutely. But the priority also has to be, which is already under U.S. law, where they're going to be safe, right? So we can't just
and can people be safe outside the United States? And I understand we may not return them to their country of origin, but if they had family in Mexico or they had family somewhere else, and those family members wanted those children, should that not be taken into consideration? It seems to me the argument has been that everyone who comes into the United States, regardless of where they're going to be placed, should remain here. And I believe that many should, but I also believe that there are certain circumstances where you have family members, particularly the 11-year-old boy who left his family. I think those parents should have some say. If my child left at 11, as a parent, I have legal rights in the United States that my child can't make that decision. As a parent, I get to be involved. And it seems to me that that should be something that we should have in our court system. And it seems to me to be something that is lacking and has not been part of the conversation. Madam Chairman, I know I'm out of time, so at this time I will yield back.
Thank you, Mr. Guest. You raised an interesting point that, frankly, I've been to the border many, many times. I've spoken to family members, and I don't generally see a situation. It's quite opposite. It's where the parents are sending the kids because of the violence, because they've already lost a kid, or because they're trying to protect them. And also the number of family members that we have that actually have come and sponsor a child, that number is very high of kids who have family in the United States. But thanks so much for your questioning and for the points that you